White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy Stephen Miller and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem now live on military bases. They are among at least 6 senior Trump administration appointees to do so in the Washington area, leaving them both isolated from the Capitol they help govern and sheltered from political violence, but also protest. Joining us now, staff writer for The Atlantic, Tom Nichols, and staff writer for The Atlantic, Michael Schur. Michael, what's the deal with this?
Well, some of these people had moved on to bases months ago. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, I think they just like the convenience of it. Some of this is because of concerns over security threats and increased precautions that were actually taken after the Charlie Kirk assassination in September. In the case of Stephen Miller in Northern Virginia, there was a protest group that was sort of harassing his family, putting out flyers with his address, chalking his sidewalks. Their family basically decided it was too dangerous after the Kirk killing. There's another senior White House person who we are not naming, who's moved to a military base since Kirk because of a foreign threat. And then Kristi Noem moved around the same time, but she moved out of her apartment in Southeast because there were pictures run in the Daily Mail basically showing the building she was living in, and that made her uncomfortable.
Tom, is it who normally lives on these bases? Are they kicking anybody out?
No, these are senior officer housing. It's not unprecedented. This has happened before, as Michael's article notes, it's not like there are people being put in the street. It does stretch senior housing a bit because there aren't a lot of these. These are pretty nice houses. But if there's a safety issue involved, it's an understandable move.
Yeah, I understand the safety thing. My question, though, is a bigger one about how they are supposed to represent the district. They are supposed to be in touch with the vibe of the district, with the desires of the people who live there and the country more broadly. And I wonder if there's any concern about being shielded from that. Michael.
Yeah, there's always been a tension there. Most senior officials in the federal government live in the city of Washington or in the neighborhoods around Washington. And, activists regularly protest outside their houses and regularly do things to make them uncomfortable. Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State for Biden, for months had people actually in tents on the roadside, as he took his kids to and from school every day. They'd have to drive through basically a protest encampment who were calling him a genocidal killer because of his support for the Israeli government. So there's long been a situation where officials can be made to be uncomfortable. What I think the shift here is that people are pulling this escape hatch. There wasn't a lot of examples in the last couple of administrations of officials who, when they face protests like this, deciding to leave their homes. Now, the question of whether there are more serious threats and whether the general political environment is becoming more dangerous is a different one. And it may well be that this is just the beginning of a new way of doing things, that if you're in the senior ranks of federal government, you can't live in the community anymore.
Yeah, that would be depressing. Tom, let's talk about nuclear weapons. The president says he wants to resume testing. We are in the middle, I believe, of upgrading our nuclear weapons. Do any of these need to be tested?
No. In fact, the United States stopped testing when it was actually way ahead on a database of actual tests. And the United States ran more nuclear tests than anybody. And if anything, restarting nuclear tests gives a green light to other countries to start restarting their nuclear testing. Which would actually be to their advantage. I mean, the Russians and the Chinese would probably love to see the Americans go back to actual explosive nuclear testing, because then they could and not carry the kind of onus or the moral stain of being the first country besides North Korea to test nuclear weapons since the 20th century. It's just a terrible idea, and it's not clear to me why the president thinks he has to do this, except I think he's probably reacting to something that the Russians did about testing delivery systems that he doesn't really understand. But it's just a bad idea overall, and it doesn't need to be done.
Is it clear to you that he actually means testing the warheads themselves or just testing the systems?
Well, nothing else makes sense because we already do test the systems. We do that all the time. When people think of nuclear testing, as I suppose as the president is thinking of it, it means exploding a nuclear weapon to see if it works. And that's, I think, with the president, and there are some other folks at places like Heritage, who at the Heritage Foundation, they want to restart that kind of testing. But people should understand, we test everything all the time. We do it with simulations. We do it by examining the components. We do it by running tests on the bombs that don't actually reach the explosive point. Exploding a nuclear bomb is not an exotic technology. It's been around for 80 years. So we have a pretty good handle on this. I think it's another one of those kind of stray thoughts that just kind of escaped the president because he saw something somewhere and felt he had to say something about it.
Yeah. All right. Tom Nichols, Michael Schur, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it.